We've probably all heard sermons on how we are to honor our father and mother. We've probably heard sermons, have a seat guys, probably heard sermons about how fathers should never exasperate their children to wrath, and all kinds of other sermons. We probably could go around the room and you guys could probably preach those sermons. So I thought that we would do something a little differently today. I know that you recognize we are a word-based church and we preach the gospel here all the time. But I thought we might use those teachings of Scripture about fatherhood and allow these guys to sort of be illustration and application of what the Bible says about fatherhood. So that's kind of the background for what we're doing today. And let me first of all just have these guys go around and tell a little bit about themselves, and we'll start over here with Mike Miller.
My name is Mike Miller, and my wife's name is Gretchen. We have two kids, Micah, who's 21, and Montana, who's 19. I've been in the lumber business for 25 years, and I own a small home building business as well.
My name is Kent Hill. My wife's name is Nita. We've been married 42 years this past week. We have 4 sons. Blake is 35, Keith's 33, Kirk's 32, and Stephen's 28. Worked for the Veterans Administration and Hospital Administration for over 40 years and retired October 14.
Awesome.
I'm Dale Stark, and my wife's Connie, and I have a son that's 24, and I have a beautiful daughter-in-law, Melissa, and I have a new grandbaby, which is amazing, Millie. I have a son that's 19, and I have a daughter that's 15, and that comes with its challenges, by the way. I'm a cosmo-psychologist. I tell everybody, you can call it hairdresser if you want, but it's a lot tougher than just cutting hair, but that's my story.
Okay, I can't follow that. So, my wife's name is Hope. My name is Travis Smith. We live in Liberty. We have 3 kiddos. Gabriel is 8, Maylee is 6, and Hudson is 4. And my degree's in accounting, but like Maylee said today on her questionnaire in Sunday school, my daddy's job is counting money.
There you go. So that's all important. But Dale, tell me about your granddaughter. No, I'm kidding. As soon as he starts in, yeah, that's great. Well, let's kind of go back to the beginning of maybe to get a grasp and context from these men about their lives growing up. What would be some of the main lessons that you guys learned from your dads when you were growing up? Just some of the main things that perhaps he taught you.
Well, my dad taught me hard work. I mean, first, he was a very hard worker. He was always busy, always doing something of an entrepreneurial nature. Mm-hmm. And very friendly person, very loving, always embraced his family. And I just have fond memories of my childhood with my father.
My dad was a patient man until it came to watching basketball games. For anybody that knew him, he knew the officials by name, and he didn't mind calling them out. But he was an honest man, and he had a strong faith. I remember as a little boy walking through the house and seeing him sitting there reading his Bible, and he just raised us by just his leadership in our home, and by example is how he raised us.
My dad had a great sense of humor. One of the things he taught me, he said, if you drop your gum in the chicken yard, don't pick it back up. But he was hardworking. I did not have a perfect father. He was not a patient man. He had to be, as life went on with me, I realized my dad who he was because of what he went through. But at 14, he quit school, worked on a farm. At 18, he stood in line to fight for this country. And looking back, my dad just had to be a man way too quick. But he taught me he was honest. He was a man of his word, integrity. But he was tough.
Yeah, my dad was tough too. Surprisingly, I've used this phrase, old man strength. And as a dad gets older, surprisingly, no matter what, they got it. Mm-hmm. They can lift whatever they want, they can push whatever they want, just because they got the dad's strength. But my dad was tough, and the strongest muscle in his body was this little knuckle right there. Because if we were in the grocery store or church, it's just a little quick whop right on top of the head. It was all I could do, not to cry, not to whatever. But he told me early and showed me earlier the importance of listening and hard work, especially at a young age.
My son Luke still has permanent marks on the back of his neck. I didn't have a strong knuckle, but two. So the scripture teaches a lot about parenting and a lot, just sort of in general terms, about how we are to love our spouses, how we're to love our kids, how we're to train them up in the way that they should go, etc. So let me just sort of cut to the chase and ask, how has your Christian faith impacted your role as a father? The way you guys have parented has been different than the way the rest of the world, in all likelihood, has parented or would parent. So how has your Christian faith impacted or affected the way that you have been a dad?
I wasn't saved until I was an adult, and right after that, was married, and Nita guided me to a Baptist church. I was reared Lutheran, and in fact, I was one of the few Baptists that actually got a letter of excommunication from the Lutheran church. Okay. But then we wanted to start a family and didn't have children for 8 years, and just didn't think we were going to. So we had a lot of time to pray about that and to grow in the Lord. And by the time we started having kids, we felt like we were ready, and we had committed to always having them in church. Every time there was an activity, we were there. Tried to have family devotions. We weren't always consistent with that as they got older, but we worked at it. And I felt like if it hadn't been for faith in the Lord, we would not have, of course, gone that direction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know a lot of people do it. I don't see how they do it without that. I know that Connie and I have prayed and cried and prayed and cried and did that over and over, trying to put God in first, and then leading by example, which, you know, I'm not the man I used to be. I'm not the man I want to be, but I thank God I'm not the man I used to be. My sister said to me when I was dating, before I met Connie, she said, I'll never forget, she said, if you think that you're going to meet and then marry and then have a child and have a godly family, you know, it's not going to happen that way. You better be living it along the way. And so that was good advice for my sister.
With us, it's I was accepted Christ at age 16, was baptized in this church, and then met my wife, who was from Springfield. And then when we married and we had kids, you know, we were hit and miss. We didn't attend all the time. And then we realized real quick something was missing. So we just really worked on a Christ-centered relationship and tried to lead by example, and failed many times, but through God's grace, we're still parenting.
Mm-hmm.
So, Hope, my wife Hope, any of those of you out there who know us, they know that Hope knows the Bible, strong as an ox in that area, and using her as someone to lean up against makes me extremely fortunate. And whenever my kids see that in her and they see that in me, it gets reinforced. Like, and my kids remind me of it all too often. Whenever I see my kids, or Maylee will come up and she's crying over something extremely important, and she'd be crying, and I said, hey Maylee, they know that I say this. I said, how much does Daddy love you? And then they hold their hands out like this, and they say, Daddy loves me the best, but then Hudson will be quick to say, but God loves me more. I said, I know, Hudson, but I love you.
That's great. There are a lot of people in the world that don't view children as the gifts that we view children as being. And we've all heard people say, for example, oh, it's awful, people shouldn't bring children into the world, it's so messed up, as if the world suddenly became messed up just during our lifetime. But we recognize as Christians that children are a gift from God, right? And so being a dad is a great blessing. It's a gift, it's a blessing. So what have been, as a dad, among some of the biggest blessings that you've experienced in raising your kids?
Well, you know, I've had some more time to think about this since earlier service, and I still can't come up with anything better than their smiles, their return love to me, their warm embrace. Just having them around is just fantastic. And then now as they've grown and two of them have had children of their own, to watch them be Christian fathers and express the love to their kids and return to them, I just can't express how satisfying that is.
That's awesome.
I know it's a church answer, but seeing all three of my children baptized right there in that baptistry by Connie's dad, their grandfather, was one of the most incredible things. When I drop Maddie off to school, I see her at 15 trying to live for God in a very ungodly world, and she gets out of the truck, and I always say, "Be odd for God," and she just rolls her eyes at me. And then I see Tanner, who's gone to college, and if you have one there, if you don't have one there, it's a pretty ungodly place. And I remember thinking, man, I hope he fits in. And then at the end of the year, you go, thank God he didn't fit in. Mm-hmm. He got involved with the BSU, and that's just what he got involved in. He met some good kids. He may not make every decision that I would make, but he's probably made a lot more better than me. My oldest son has married an incredibly godly girl, and when I see him sitting in the house, holding that little girl, reading to her, I've done more wrong than I have right in my life. But the biggest blessing so far has been able to see him be such a godly young man. It's been pretty incredible.
For me, it was the opportunity to pray with my kids as they accepted Christ, and they were both baptized here as well. And then watch them grow in their faith and getting them involved. Montana, my son has worked in Awanas, leading that, a group in that, and my daughter, she has worked with the children's ministry stuff here, has done some youth activities with them. Attended Thursday night Bible study with my son, was a great blessing to spend time with him. I learned a lot from him. They graduated high school, and we thought, well, they'll go on to college, but they did, but they stayed at home. Sometimes we view that as not so much of a blessing, but in all reality, it's a huge blessing because we get to continue to bring them to church or encourage them to come to church with us every Sunday. We didn't have the worry that some parents do, is my child going to find a church home when they go to college? And I know that's hard. So we've been very blessed by that.
You guys are really starting to make me feel like a rookie up here. It's getting hot. For me, coming home from work, like you said, I still got two that want to run up to me and they say, "Hey, Daddy," and give me a hug. And for those of you that were here, when I got to baptize Gabriel in the baptistry up there, I'll never forget it, and I'm thankful Melanie was there to take good pictures. And after that, Gabriel, we talked about it, and I tried to teach him to be a tough boy, even though Hudson and Maylee's the toughest. But he said, "Daddy, you were crying," and I said, "No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't." I said I had something.
You just lied in church, Travis. Don't do that.
It's getting hot up here.
That's just wrong.
Yeah,
We're going to vote him off the island right now. Now there are three of us talking.
I said I just had something caught in my eye.
Yeah.
I said, "Okay, Gabe, just don't tell Mommy." I wasn't.
Yeah, I get it. I've had the privilege of baptizing hundreds of people, and when I baptized my boys, I think I was able to say, "I baptize you, my brother and my son," and then there was silence because nothing would come out for a while. So I get that. So there are a lot of blessings, but we also know that in this world in which we live, there are a lot of challenges. And so could you speak to us a little bit from your perspective, what have been some of the biggest challenges in life, being a dad who is a Christian, trying to influence your family?
It's easy when they're little is what I tell the people, you know. It seems like a tough time. You can fix a lot. You can glue a lot back together and put a Band-Aid on a knee. I think for me it's been harder to see some things. I couldn't fix it all. Connie read an article one time, said if you do your job right, you work yourself out of a job. But seeing them struggle through something that I couldn't fix, it was tough. That was probably the hardest thing for me, is that I couldn't fix it all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think as the children, when they were little and you had total control, and it was a lot easier than when they got bigger and started developing their own volition. I'm going to give Bob Kleinschmidt a holler because he was bringing it up to me. And it was tougher. It was tougher to maintain family time and family devotions. I just felt like that was a challenge for us.
Mm-hmm.
I think a challenge for me was just balancing work and the home. Gretchen was fortunate enough she didn't work, so she got to stay home with the kids, which was a huge blessing. So I felt a little more pressure that I had to work all the time, and I don't think I probably spent as much time with them as I could have, so that was a challenge that I struggled with. And now that they're still at home at 19 and 21, I spend a little more time with them.
When I see or listen to you guys say what your challenges were back then, for me, sitting here right now, I'm thinking my challenge is knowing that, and then a lady told me after first service, just chill, man, it's all good. Well, she didn't say it like that. She said, take it easy. It's going to be okay, but I'm sitting here stressing, thinking, am I saying the right things, or am I talking about the right subjects yet? Are they too young? Should we not have watched that movie with Jack Nicholson in it? You know, I don't.
No, you shouldn't have, I'm sure. I can pretty much guarantee that.
Yeah,
but go
okay,
ahead.
I know. So I'm just trying to walk on eggshells, I guess, at the same time.
Sure. So there are great blessings, great challenges, and undoubtedly, contrary to what sort of face oftentimes we in the church have put forward, we know that as believers, we're not immune from big heartache. And so what would be sort of at the top of the list as far as some of the biggest heartaches that you guys may have faced as a dad?
I'll go first. My biggest heartache as a dad came January 2011. I was at the sports show with my father and my son, Montana, walking around having a good time. We had been to the doctor with him about something he had in December. And I received a phone call from the doctor then that he had cancer. So, hearing that, I asked, tell me a little bit about what he has. He said, it's very rare. I don't know anything about it. I do know there's one doctor in Kansas City that will treat this type and accept kids. So I continued to walk through the sports show for a short time, trying to keep it all together. And we took him home, me and my dad. Didn't tell my dad. And got home and set him down in the chair in the living room. And that's when it really was probably the hardest. We told him what he had. He asked if he was going to be okay. And we said we couldn't guarantee that, but we knew that God had a plan for him and his life, and we were going to do everything possible to get the best treatment we could for him. This past January was 5 years cancer-free. So far, God has shown his faithfulness to us through this journey.
Connie and I lost a baby at 5 months, and I would say that for me as a father was a pretty tough moment. You know, you take for granted, you get pregnant, you have a baby, you come home, and it didn't play out that way. We had lots of church family that came to my house in the length of time to make a phone call and get in their car and drive over and prayed with us and cried with us. But I can say, looking back, that there was so many good things that came from that, and that's kind of a crazy thing to say, but a lot of good things came from that. God has been good to Connie and I beyond what we would ever have dreamed. I've got three beautiful, healthy children, and Maddie came after that loss of that baby. So, is she spoiled? Did I cut the crust off her toast? I did, but you know, like I said, my mother-in-law says, "I can't believe you do that." I go, "Hey, that's the way she likes it. That's the way she gets it."
You're up. I'm not following that. You're up.
Anything? Undoubtedly, no matter how many of the right things that we do as parents, we all wish we had a mulligan from time to time where we could go back and have an opportunity to do something differently, or maybe take back some words or sort of redirect a conversation. So if you could go back in time and do something or some things differently as a parent, as a dad in particular, what would you do differently?
Well, this morning I remembered one thing, and I remembered one other since then.
Okay.
I wish I had been more patient with my sons. I had really high expectations and didn't really mellow out until, for some of them, it was too late, and they had already had my impression on them. And I wish that we spent a lot of time in mission-type churches and smaller churches, and we were always involved. But I look back now and thought maybe it'd been better if we'd been involved in churches with larger children programs, just to give my children more choices. I don't know that for sure, but it's just something I've looked back on and thought maybe I should have done that different.
Not to steal his, but mine would be patience. My dad was not, and I repeat, not a patient father. He was hard and tough and very dominant and kind of a control freak. And I'm a control freak. My wife is very good at making my children think they're thinking on their own. My method is not quite that good, because that's how my dad did it. So there's been a couple times when Tyler we were on a trip in Branson. If he was here, he'd be smiling right now. And I came unraveled, and it was bad. But it's a great story now. He forgave me, and we laugh about it now, but I wasn't. I wish I could have been more patient. And I see people come into the shop where I cut hair, and I see these dads, and I think Travis is that way. I think he thinks about what he's going to say. I operate kind of like a cheap bottle rocket. It's a quick bang, and so I wish I could have been more patient and kind. Hopefully my kids aren't too traumatized, but I was not a patient father at all.
Okay, it's a broken record. The patience thing for me, my dad, like you, he's a strong guy, and he wants to make sure that the ducks are in a row, and as a part of my job or what I do, I'm kind of the same way, a bit of a control freak, and thankfully he helps me clear that out. But whenever I shared this earlier, but one time I was in a bit of a chaotic situation in our house, and when you look back on it, you guys have told me that it's not that chaotic. But it's around the dinner table, and the kids are getting upset or going crazy, and I look at Hudson, my youngest boy, and he's doing something, and I give him that look, and I go to stand up, and he does this. He's like, so at the time, it's kind of funny. I feel tough, but then when I look back on it, I feel about that big when I realize that my 4-year-old, if he's acting out, he's scared. So that's a challenge for me.
What about the relationship with your wife, and how have you been able to demonstrate the way that you would want your kids to treat their spouse or to be treated by a spouse? So what are some things you've demonstrated to show the importance, really, of your relationship with your wife so that your kids could see something healthy of a family life being modeled?
Well, for us, we're big on dating, me and my wife, and thought when they graduated high school that they would go away to college.
They're not going away, okay? Just so we're clear. They're here to stay, all right?
And we maybe go on a few more dates. And we still do, but there's usually 4 of us. I don't know if it's because they like to be with us or they just get a free meal. So just seeing us together,
Yeah.
and being right beside us.
Yeah.
I'm hopeless romantic, and so I hope that I've taught, and I see that in Tyler with how he treats Melissa. Not that I do everything right. I do more wrong than I do right, but I think I've tried to teach my kids how to treat a woman with respect. And he mentioned earlier about hugging his children and how they love that. Nothing will gross your 15-year-old out more than smooching on your wife. I mean, Maddie's all but hurled her lunch a couple times, but I hope they've seen me do that. And I told the story earlier when Tyler was, I don't know, about 13, 14. Remember that age, because it's crucial. But I walked into the kitchen, and Tyler, it wasn't dirty, but he said something very disrespectful to Connie. And I remember, like I said, remember my dad, the whacker? I'm a whacker. So I flipped him right in the lips, and he had braces on. I'll never forget it. And I said, don't you ever talk to my wife that way. I don't talk to her that way, and you're not. Now, don't get me wrong. Later, I went, oh, my gosh, I can't believe I did that.
You said that quietly, too, didn't you?
Yeah.
And calm.
Yeah, but I don't treat Connie with disrespect, and I think that I see Tyler, how he treats Felicity, and it makes me proud, and I think Tanner and hopefully Maddie are learning that along the way too.
Well, you know, I'm the oldest one up here, so I'm from the old school. And I believe a woman should know her place in the home.
How's that working out?
Take that note.
Please, if you work with the press, just hold on. There's more coming, okay? So don't put this one in the paper just yet.
And I had Nita's permission to say that. And I had to clear it again with her between services.
That's right.
No, I've never hesitated to express my love for Nita or affection in front of our kids. And they've told me that. They've seen it, and I think they've learned from that.
Sure.
And I didn't say this, but I said, I know that I noticed Ken. If you notice Ken and Lori, they hold hands. And I know Jess and Anita, they hold hands. I think that's important to teach your kids that you love they need to see that you love mom. That's super important.
Yeah.
You've got to tell this story.
I've already gotten a little bit of trouble for this.
Okay, so don't tell the story.
Okay, no, here it goes. Okay. So I said at first service, and I feel like you know how they say before you start something, you shouldn't say you do this, a little bit of this? I feel like I'm looking for hope in here, but she's with the kids in preschool worship, so I'm clear, as long as it doesn't get out there. But I've got this workout program pasted on my wall at my office. If something important, I pin it up on the wall, and it's called a Dad's Workout Program for boys. And at age 2 is when it first starts that every day you've got to do this certain task. One of them is tell the boy or tell the girl you love them, and they got to know that their daddy loves their mommy. So in our house, in Kearney, the way it was set up, the kitchen's there, and if you don't know, our family's really good at being loud. We have a lot of dance parties in the kitchen. We have a lot of hangout times, and that stresses Hope out sometimes because we get loud. So if I can see that happening, or for my own selfish reasons, I'll grab Hope by the hand, and we'll walk into the pantry, and we shut the door, and maybe some kissing going on in there. And so the kids know that if Daddy goes into the pantry to get some bread and Mommy follows him in there, or it's usually vice versa. I can't say it like she would never follow me. Okay, so if I see Hope going in to get the spaghetti out to make supper, I'm hopping in that baby like fast. Okay, so I go in there and I'll shut the door and I'll give her a kiss. And my kids, right now, like you said, they still think it's cool, and so they'll be like, hurry up, Daddy's kissing Mommy in the pantry, go get the door open. But I can tell that there's a little bit of happiness there, like not at a teenage years, but now that, so much now that my boys, Gabriel, Hudson, they'll grab Hope by the hand, take her in the pantry, and Hudson will look up, Mommy. If he wants a kiss from Mommy, take her in the pantry.
Man. There's 20 guys that just said we're going to build a house with a big pantry.
You said getting bread? Is that what I call it?
Right, getting bread. This is making
so to wrap this up, since we're about out of time here, if you think about a new dad, or maybe a soon-to-be dad, and you look back on your time and what you've done as a parent, what advice would you offer to a new dad or a guy that's maybe about to become a father? Just a couple of parting shots, nuggets of wisdom.
I know that Connie and I have stressed and worried and cried about things that really, seriously, didn't matter whatsoever, whether it be a month later, 2 months later, when your son breaks up with a girl and they're crying, and we stressed. Literally it didn't matter. God has been so good to us. I think, too, we put a lot of time into, I'm going to use the word stuff. You can use stuff and put it for whatever it is. We put a lot of time and money into stuff that really doesn't matter. There's a song by Nicole, am I saying it right? Nicole Nordeman. It's called Slow Down. And obviously I'm a crier. My kids look over me, are you crying? Are you crying? Are you seriously crying? It's a Pepsi commercial. But I cry at everything. I can't help it. But if you can watch that video, Nicole Nordman, and the name of the song is called Slow Down, you're a much stronger person than me, which probably wouldn't take much. But I can't get over, I was there. I wasn't absent from the backyard. I threw the football. How fast it went by in the blink of an eye. You know, Tanner's 19, he's bigger than me. It's crazy how fast it went by. So grab the brake, try to slow it down a little bit, and some of the stuff you worry about really doesn't matter.
I would say, tell them that you love them every day. My dad had surgery in 2013. Before he went in, I leaned down and gave him a kiss and told him I loved him.
Mm-hmm.
Short time after that, he became septic and passed away.
Mm.
And I have held on to that, him telling me he loved me since. It's got me through a lot of tough times. And patience. And try to lead by example. Try to have a Christ-centered relationship with your wife and lead by example because your kids are watching. And if you tell them the right thing to do and you're not doing it, it's just a waste of time.
I like what Mike said. I mean, so one of my sons is in St. Louis and one's in St. Joe, and we talk pretty often on the phone, but there's not a conversation that doesn't end without us saying we love each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's important. I think in today's environment with really seems like the growing evil stuff going on, that I think maintaining control as long as possible and separation is really important, especially as they get older. I like the idea of keeping them home even during when they're going to school, because you're just not going to get anything but a liberal perspective when they leave the house. And I think it's sad. It needs to be planned for.
Well, among all the others, this is definitely the question I'd be least qualified to answer. But I think God did it on purpose, but not even 10 seconds into me being a dad of a newborn baby boy, when he came out and he wasn't breathing and he basically looked like he passed away already. And I'm freaking out, thinking doctors, nurses, please take care of this, or I'm going to take care of it. And I knew that I couldn't. Obviously, I had no idea what to do, but God, I could hear God, not audibly, but literally telling me, Travis, you're not going to be in control of this kid's life. That no matter what I do, I got to let God take control of it. That was a tough lesson to learn.
Absolutely. Well, thank you guys for sharing with us today. And would you guys join me in thanking these men for doing that today?